Welcome to our second Campfire Talk. Well, again, it's more like a shed talk because, as you can see, we are in the shed again. Helmut was pretty busy today working on our new ride here, and I have to say, you are quite dirty and smelly, to be honest.
Can't be. I'm thirsty. That's the thing.
Oh, well,
I guess I've earned it.
Today.
I hope so.
Did I earn it? Not sure about
I don't know.
Well, today we have it under control?
Well,
okay.
Probably get hurt while opening a beer.
While you take care of the beer, I want to tell you guys what today's Campfire episode is about, because it's about the one question we probably got asked the most over the last 20 months.
Yeah, and the question is, why the hell did we choose 55-year-old 50cc two-strokes to travel, well, not only Australia, but the whole world? We're going to talk about that. And of course, we're going to dive into the technical part, which means what did we do to bring them back on the road? They have been in a very bad condition when we bought them. And of course, what did we modify to make them suitable for long distance adventure traveling? And last of all, did we enjoy traveling on them? So let's get started.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
So we start with the first question, which is how on earth did we came up with a slightly crazy idea of riding, well, firstly around Australia on this very old, very tiny two-stroke moped? Helmut, how did we?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a story, to be honest, and it all started back in 2020. By then we've been back home from our motorcycle world trip for around four or five years or so. And we've been traveling with our trusty Transapps through Switzerland. We had a nice camp spot, campfire. We had a couple of beers. You always have the greatest ideas with beer. And
yes, always involved with these bad ideas of ours.
Good ideas. What's wrong? Well, anyway, we've been sitting there and we both could feel since quite a while the itch of having a proper adventure again, going somewhere else, experiencing foreign culture and country and so on.
Just living back on the road again, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
And interestingly, for the both of us, on our whole world trip, Australia was one of the countries we had the feeling we are not finished yet. There is still so much to see, to discover. So it was quite quick. It was clear that it will be Australia again.
We're gonna go back to Australia.
But to be honest, I dreamed about let's say a nice four-wheel drive, maybe a Land Cruiser with a big fridge, a little bit more comfort, a nice rooftop tent. But what I definitely did not see coming is what I ended up with instead.
Well, I had a bit of a different idea in my mind. Not straight away the 50cc bike, I have to say, but well, it's also a bit of a longer story, because when we started our motorcycle trip around the world, it was back in 2009-10 when we made the decision. We sold all our stuff, and back then we started a blog, a website, which was pretty modern back in those days. Social media wasn't big back then, and it grew and grew, and over time it got to one of the biggest German-speaking motorcycle adventure blogs, and therefore we got in contact with a lot of people. We got a lot of emails, messages, then came social media. And over this time, we got the impression that motorcycle traveling has changed. It was not so much anymore about the experience itself, but more about the gear.
Yeah, and so we thought, well, back in the days, that people just grabbed whatever bike they had, threw some stuff on, and then just took off on an adventure. It doesn't matter if it's the perfect bike, the perfect gear, they just wanted to experience something. And we thought, well, why not trying it the same way, really stripping the bike back down to its basics and see what happens.
Yeah, well, and as a teenager, I didn't have one of those 50cc bikes. I couldn't afford one. And then I said, well, why don't we travel with a 50cc moped? And then she was like really happy, like.
Well, to be honest, I was thinking about getting a smaller bike anyway, because the Transalp is quite top heavy and I really struggled, especially off-road with it quite a lot. But I honestly didn't expect a bike being that small and that slow.
Well, that was basically two flies with one, what's the saying?
Two birds with one stone.
That's the English saying, right.
That was very German.
So, yeah, perfect decision. For me, at least, she wasn't.
Well, in this very moment, with a couple of beers, I thought it was a brilliant decision or idea, but next day I wasn't so sure about it anymore.
But anyway, the idea stuck. And that brings us to the second question. Why a Kreidler Florett? I probably pronounce it German.
Well, that's the proper German pronunciation for the Kreidler.
Yes, it's a German brand. Well, we didn't choose in particular the Kreidler Florett, but we did some research on Australia, on the places we wanted to go. And one thing was for sure, we wanted to do some of the toughest tracks the country has to offer. And as you know, Australia, it's a very harsh place, or big parts of Australia are very harsh, desert, remote, hot. So we needed a reliable cooling system. And usually those bikes, those 50cc's, are air-cooled. But Kreidler and 𝗬𝗵𝗃 back in those days, they built a fan-forced model, which means there's a little fan on the flywheel, and as long as the engine is running, it basically cools itself. So we went for one of those. And then eventually I had a look at Kleinanzeigen, that's the marketplace for such stuff here in Germany. And eventually a Kreidler Florett turned up, and I also paid attention to the look. I did want to have a vintage look, spoked wheels and so on. And then this bike turned up and I phoned the guy, and it was close, it was price-wise okay.
And most importantly?
Yeah, I asked him on the phone because I said, well, obviously we need two bikes. And he said, well, by accident, I have another bike for sale. Well, and then we went there.
And this is how we ended up with two Kreidler Florett.
Florett. She tries to pronounce it now in English. Florett.
I think I said it
Kreidler
4 times
Florett.
now. Florett, with two Kreidler Florett.
German
But
pronunciation.
you have to say, they both have been in a quite poor condition, so they were not running. So first big job was restoring them.
Well, before we talk about the restoration itself, I would like to talk about a few facts about those bikes. Well, my bike is a 69 model, 𝗬's bike is a 75. It's basically the same bike. There was a model change, a facelift, we would probably call it back in those days.
It looks cooler.
Yes.
Say it as it is.
Yeah, of course. But basically the bikes are the same, and that was important for us because spare parts wise it makes traveling a lot easier. Well, they are both 50cc two-strokes pre-mixed in the tank. We have a 12-liter tank that's good for, it depends on terrain and how we're going to ride them. That's good for 350 to 400 Ks. We have free speed, 2.9 horsepower. They were meant to do 40 kilometers an hour. Back then, I tweaked the engine, of course, a little bit, but more on the restoration topic. They have, when they're dry, they have 80 kilograms and a payload
of incredible 165 kilogram, which is exactly the same than our big 600cc 𝗬𝗵𝗃, which is pretty impressive for such a tiny little bike, I would say.
Back in those days, 2 adults, 165 kilograms, which means they are absolutely robust. And that brings us now to the restoration topic. Restoration-wise, what did we do to those bikes? Well, first of all, of course, I took them completely apart. The frame got sandblasted, and in between I took care of all the tiny bits and pieces, and that meant, well, new rims. We respoked both wheels, rebuilt them completely. We redid or overhauled the brakes, the suspension, got new cables. I rewired the whole bike, and as I mentioned earlier, I tweaked the engine. As I said, 2.9 horsepower originally, and I tweaked them so now they have like 5 to 6 horsepower, which is...
Ooh, 6 horsepower! That's incredible!
That's 100% more.
Than the original, that's true.
Yeah, the reason is pretty simple. First of all, Australia, long distances. We just wanted to go a bit faster. Therefore, we carry different sprockets. For the tough stuff, we have a very small sprocket. You've probably seen on the old Telegraph track episode. And for the long distances, to cover a bit more ground, we got a bigger sprocket. And second of all, of course, we wanted the bike to handle the weight, the luggage a bit better. So that is the reason why we tweaked the engine. And that already brings us to the last topic. Which modifications did we do to make the bike capable of such an adventure travel?
Oh, hang on, you forgot something very important, because one part of the restoration was a new paint.
Ah, right.
And Helmut came up with a pretty unique idea, but I immediately loved the idea. And when we presented them, I think not everyone was so happy with our color scheme, because some called our rust paint, how was it?
𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 it's proper rust actually.
So, but we loved it. So this really became a running gag. So we have the 𝗬𝗵𝗃 metallic bikes now. They fitted perfectly into the Australian desert.
You can call it now the first modification, but let's jump right into the travel modifications we did. Well guys, modification-wise, the bikes are 55-year-olds, and I have to mention the company collapsed in the early 80s, so it doesn't exist anymore as many did back in those days. So there is basically no accessories out there you could buy. So you have to come up with own ideas, you have to build the stuff, you have to steal something from other bikes and so on. That's basically what we did. So first of all, we changed to an electronic ignition, 12 volt instead of 6. We have an additional battery so we can charge basically all our gear on the bike. We are pretty independent. We can run all our camera gear, and that was very important for us because otherwise it wouldn't have been possible to film all those episodes throughout Australia.
While being out somewhere in the bush for days without
exactly.
the possibility of charging.
Big parts of Australia are in the middle of nowhere, basically, so it wouldn't have been possible without charging or keeping all our stuff up to charge. Other than that, I built a skid plate just to protect the engine housing from flicking rocks. Then we have an LED auxiliary headlight. I actually installed that in Townsville because the original light is so poor.
Like a candle.
It's like a candle.
Really
even with this 12 volt bulb, it's still like a candle. It's horrible. I built a front luggage rack. For the rear we used an original luggage rack, but I modified it as well. And the reason being for the front luggage rack is we wanted to distribute the weight a bit better. The bike, as you know, has a small tank and even smaller engine, so there is basically not much weight on the front wheel. So having a front luggage rack and those bags helps us to bring more weight to the front, and that makes the bike a lot better rideable, and of course gives us a bit more space to store all our belongings.
Well, now I can store 4 undies instead of 3. Woohoo!
Because they are so big.
What? That was mean again. No, it's the first time you've been mean to me today.
Exactly.
It's a good day. It's a good day.
Did you recognize? It's a reaction. You know, she just beats me for anything. So I'm a really poor guy. Think about me.
Keep on.
But anyway, luggage-wise, we use the Legend gear from 𝗬𝗺𝗃. I mean, look at it. I would say it's built for this bike. It's meant for this bike. It looks absolutely great.
Well, it's of course not, but it fits perfectly.
It fits perfectly, yeah. And that was something we've been after. We did quite a bit of research. We wanted to keep the vintage look, and I mean, as I said, 𝗬𝗺𝗃 bags, the Legend gear stuff, that fits very, very well. The only thing we modified there is the rear bags. We got them extended because originally they have 13, the big ones have 13.5 liter, if I remember properly, and we needed a bit more space.
Coming back to the 4 big undies.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. Or the 6-pack. So we extended them.
It's all about the beer, not the undies.
Yeah, priorities. Undies, beer. Undies, beer. So I'm worrying now a little bit, because if she would have said like food, that would be something different, but she worries about the undies.
Yeah? 3 undies, you know the episode?
Yeah.
If you watched it?
Yeah.
If not,
if you have a scary day, you use them up in one day. Yeah, that's horrible. Well, anyway, we got those bags extended. Now they have roughly 20 to 22 liters. So I wouldn't say double the size, but they're way bigger. That helps a lot. Other than that, K46 Heidenau knobby tires, and I installed rim locks. Now we probably have the only 2 Kreidlers in the world that use rim locks, and the reason is pretty simple. We can drop the tire pressure right down, and that makes sand riding a lot better. I would say that's pretty much it. Do you have something else in mind? I guess that's all the modifications.
If there is anything we forgot or something you want to know, please just drop us a comment and we try to answer it.
All right. Last topic for the day, one you might be interested the most. Do we actually enjoy traveling on those little 50cc bad boys? Well, yeah, I think it's time for a little story. Let's answer it with a story. Our first rough idea was traveling Australia for 6 months and basically only doing a loop, the toughest tracks the country has to offer. But we ended up traveling for 18 months and covering 30,000 kilometers. I wouldn't say all over Australia, but big parts of it. So I would say that basically answers it. We absolutely fell in love traveling on those little bikes.
And you have to say, we don't get paid to say this because, like you mentioned before, Kreidler collapsed way back in the day, so they don't exist anymore. But we just love them. We love the little 50s.
Yeah, right. Well, unfortunately, because then we could get away from drugs and prostitution, money-wise. But it's another topic for a campfire. How do we earn money? Probably. So anyway, let's come back to the bikes, because there's one thing we didn't expect while traveling with those little bikes, and that's how it changed our way of traveling for 2 reasons. Well, first of all, of course, obviously the bike. It's different, so we had to adapt to the bike. And second of all, we had the idea to accompany the whole adventure with a couple of cameras, and we fell so in love with the presenting and the filming and the storytelling that both of these factors basically changed the way how we did travel.
It definitely, the focus shifted from the pure tough adventure travel to a lot of things that happen in between. Like
Exactly.
We really dived into the history of the country. We learned so much of Australia, which we didn't know before, about the environment, about the animals. We met so many interesting and inspiring people along the road and tried to include their stories into our episodes to share them.
Yeah.
And all the other unplanned little things that happened in between and that absolutely changed the character of the travel.
Yeah, and that's basically the reason why it took so much longer, how we did cover so much more ground. And coming back to the bikes itself, well, as I said, it's different. There are, for adventure traveling, for long distance adventure traveling, for sure there are way better bikes out there. But what makes them so special is actually the back to roots. They're simple, like there are no whistles and bells and all that sort of stuff. It's just riding, wind in your face. That's pretty much it. And of course, a very distinctive 2-stroke sound. And that gives you an incredible interaction with people. If you turn up on a parking lot, like we have a little bicycle bell, that's our horn, and the 2-stroke sound, you turn up, there are children, there are women, there are men, whatever. They're all smiling.
And when we ride through a town, and I normally ride behind you, you can see all the heads are turning like, what the fuck is that? You can really see it in the people's face, like, what the hell?
Yeah. And that is an absolutely unique experience, and I wouldn't change it. It might be not for everyone traveling on those little bikes.
No, but for us, it was the best choice we could make. Yeah. And I think that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, that's pretty much the end for this episode. I think we covered some ground. Yeah. If you have any questions,
drop it in the comments. We try to answer all of them.
Yep.
And what's up next week?
Next week, Bloomfield Trek, bit of adventure, 𝗬𝗺 tablelands, amazing places, and we have a little breakdown.
We have what? Say it again.
A breakdown.
I think we don't have breakdowns with our
No. Usually that's.
Well, that's a topic for next Sunday. For now, have a good one. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.